Hi, everyone, and welcome. So, today I am joined by Jose over at Amazing Worlds and Steve over at Steve Talks Books to talk about The Heroes by Joe Abercrombie. So, the second standalone in his First Law universe. We read Best Served Cold last month. Some of us really liked it, others didn't. So, I'm quite excited to see how you two liked The Heroes. So, this will be a spoiler filled discussion, by the way. So, if you haven't read the book, don't continue watching. We will be discussing spoilers. But Jose, I know that you really like Best Served Cold. How do you like The Heroes?
Um, still trying to figure out, and I think I read it like 2, 3 weeks ago. I think it left me a little bit indifferent, a little bit meh. Now, I don't think there was nothing wrong with it. I just failed to see the point of the book.
Okay.
But the writing was good, the characters were great. Just the story in itself was a bit. I was a bit left like I could have read it, I could have not read it. Yeah, for now, that's what I want to say.
Okay. And Steve, same feelings or?
Well, I think just as an introduction, I think really quickly, I tried to take your advice last time of just kind of leaving preconceptions and expectations behind from first law. And I think that helped me with this one a little bit more. I don't really see the point of it either. I think he was trying to get through. I think the point of it was how the the pointlessness and the repetition of war and how it's all this big mess, but it's not particularly interesting to read over 500 pages or whatever, how many pages it was. So I can see what he was going for. I just don't think it was all that. I don't know that it's fun to read. It's other than just being told.
So both of you like this one less than Best Served Cold?
I like this one better, I think.
Okay.
A little bit better.
Yeah. I think for me is the weakest book in the whole First Law universe that I've read so far. Out of the 5 of them I've read, that's not to say it's a bad book, which is not. But yeah, weakest First Law universe book so far.
Okay. I was going to ask you somewhere how your ranking was for the entire First Law, but it's pretty clear already. Yeah, I guess that I'm the only one who really enjoyed this one. I definitely liked it better than Best Served Cold. But yes, I can see there was just zero plot. It was just 4 days of war, and that's it. But I really like the characters here. I think we had some old characters that I just quite enjoyed, but also the new ones. I just really found very interesting. And for the overall plot, there maybe wasn't a lot, but for the individual characters, you had like little subplots. Like Calden, I don't know if that's how you call him, who in the end is Black Calden. I really liked his journey throughout the book. Finri was another character that I quite enjoyed. So I like this one a lot better than Best Served Cold, which had more plot. But I'm not a plot-driven person anyway, so I didn't really care. And I think that part of it is also that with Best Served Cold, I went in with super high expectations because I loved the First Law trilogy. Then I didn't like Best Served Cold, and a lot of people said, well, that was my favorite one, and The Heroes is about battles, so you're definitely not going to like it. So I went in with low expectations, and then I was pleasantly surprised.
That seems to be the trick for everything, isn't it? Just dampen down expectations.
Yeah.
Expect the worst and be willing to be surprised. Because in our last conversation, you said you don't like battles. So as I was reading the book, I was thinking, well, Jolien is going to hate this because really that's all it is, just as one long affair. But yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I think I've also come to the conclusion that I don't dislike all battles or military fantasy. It can be hit or miss. Because Gardens of the Moon, for example, that I read together with Steve, I did really enjoy. It's when it's too much about the tactics. Like there was one scene in this book where we switched POVs pretty fast. Like we followed one guy and then he was killed by another guy, and then we followed that guy who was then killed by that guy. I found that extremely boring. And I have skim read that part because I just couldn't care. And I knew, oh, this character is going to die in the next paragraph. So why should I bother reading this? I don't know if you two liked it, because I did really like the way that he was telling it and how he shifted, and it almost felt like you were watching a movie in that sense. So I liked what he was doing there. It just didn't really work for me.
Jose, what do you think?
So without trying to sound too literary about it, but so there were like that initial conversation when they meet at the Heroes Hill, that these two opposing guys, it just reminded me so much of it was almost like a Discworld Terry Pratchett dialogue where two guys are there to kill each other, but they are all friends, so they can have a casual, friendly chat about killing each other, and they can walk away feeling good about themselves because they didn't, or they will just leave it for tomorrow type thing. So it reminded me a lot of that. So I don't know if it was intentional or not, but I enjoyed that, and I had a little callback to Discworld. And also, again, without trying to get too highbrow, it reminded me of a novel by a Spanish Nobel Prize winner called The Beehive, which just surrounds around, is centered around a bar in Madrid, and you have all these characters that go into the bar, and you get little snippets of their lives, and all these stories connect at the bar. And this was exactly the same thing. You've got a huge cast of characters. We follow all of them from the lowest ranking new recruit to the king and the general, and everyone has got their own story. And I think in that regard, Abercrombie's character work is great because he has to get you to care and introduce you to all these different characters. And with very little effort, he manages to give them all a personality. So I think that was really, really good. Although I'll put my hand up and say that at one point, I had to go back to the beginning where you've got the who's who in the book. Yeah. And I had to check a couple of names because you just literally overloaded with named characters and sites. But yeah.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I haven't read Discworld yet. I really need to. But I really like that beginning as well because it felt like, what's the point? You are going to fight tomorrow and will have no issue killing each other then because it's on the battlefield. But now it's like, well, let's be civilized about this. So I found it a little bit funny to start off like that, and it really set a note for the rest of the book. But because I didn't really know the characters at that point when they were then on that hill of the heroes and Craw was talking with his crew, I start thinking if it's just going to be this, talking and just having like conversations that don't really go anywhere, I don't know if I will be invested. But then because I start knowing the characters and be invested in their storyline, I actually did like those conversations. But at the start, I was very worried. But go ahead, Steve.
No, I was just going to say that the first half is, the second half is a lot better than the first half, I thought. The first half was kind of tough.
Yeah. I also think that, I don't know about you, Jose, but I know that Steve and I, especially for Best Served Cold, we start getting bored with the jokes because they felt like they were the same over and over and over again. I didn't really have that feeling here. Probably just because I like the characters more. I don't know if that's it, but because we had some new characters and they had some new ways of being funny. So I liked that it was a little bit of fresh meat.
Yeah, I mean, I find nothing to dislike about Abercrombie's writing style. Some things were a little bit obvious on the nose, but like I said, with so many characters and trying to give them all a personality. So like, you know what you've got? Is it Gorst? The one that you get in his head. So you know what he's thinking, and then he says exactly the opposite to what he's thinking. And then every time we are on his point of view, we've got that little trick. So yeah, towards the end, that got a little bit repetitive, but you know, he's just one of 20 characters or so. So yeah, a little bit repetitive, but like I said, I like Abercrombie. I like how he writes, so no issues for me on that regard. And I understand why maybe he had to do that for that particular character.
Yeah.
Was it just me, or does some of the dialogue seem like a Western, like you're watching a Western movie? Is that, or was that just me?
I do think that that's what he's going for a little bit. I can't really put my finger on it when I noticed that, but I did have that feeling a couple of times as well. And I think that that will be even more in Red Country. So maybe that's like his way to segue into his next standalone.
I don't know is the honest answer. I think I've watched a lot of the classic westerns, but it was long ago, so maybe. I just haven't got that freshness of mind to say yes or no.
Mm-hmm. And well, we talked a couple of times that there are a lot of characters. Did you think that there were too many? Like, okay, it would have been better if they were just some fewer characters, especially the ones that are only there for a couple of paragraphs that don't really add a lot. Would it be easier to follow and also just shorter? So maybe edited better? Or do you like that it's just such a big cast of characters?
Well, I think what he was going for was the confusion and the hectic nature of war and this kind of battle. So I can see why he had so many characters, but I'm not a big fan of too many characters because I have to go back to the front of the book and find out who's who sometimes. But I can see what he's going for. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but I can see what he was trying to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I liked all of them. Except for two, and I don't understand what the point of them was. I'm hoping there's a payoff later on, and it is Bayas, the first of the Magi, because as soon as he's there, the shit's gonna hit the fan, right?
Yeah.
But what did he bring? Him and the other witchy woman who is sided with the two antagonized witch and wizard. They don't do any magic because Abercrombie and magic don't just gel together, right? So why is that? What? Just for the canons? But there must be something else. He must be setting something up for Red Country or future novels, because they are the only two characters that bring nothing to the party.
Mm-hmm.
He's a super powerful wizard, but he does nothing. He's just there being sarcastic, having chats with people, making sure the cannons fire. We don't need a wizard for that. So I don't know what you guys thought about that one in particular. That did my head in.
Hi, Joanna. Yeah, I know that Joanna really loved the book, by the way. So, yeah, well, with Bayas, I have the same feeling because in the original trilogy, he did something more. And you had Juvens and that whole building with Juvens where it was very strange, like nothing really was possible if you look at normal like gravity and stuff like that. So that was very magical. And then it seemed like this all was thrown out of the window because now we know that he's a wizard, but he didn't really do anything. Because like you said, Jose, cannons, that's just a normal invention that probably in their world they think that this is something magical, but he's basically just an engineer at this point. And if they would just make him super powerful and that's it, as a normal person, I think that maybe would have worked better than making him a wizard, but then not letting him do anything.
But it's almost like in the first trilogy, he kickstarts the whole plot. He's the catalyst for people going places and doing things. Here, he's just there. We don't know exactly what for. We've got his antagonist, the Black Witch woman, but there's no confrontation between them. I think she even just disappears down the crack of a wall at some point, and that's it. So that she literally does nothing at all. So like, I just keep repeating the same thing. I'm hoping that this is set up for something later, because otherwise, it's the biggest dead-end non-issue I've read in all his books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do agree. And I do think that will pay off because we have the Gurkish against then, well, of course, the Union here. And we have the Eaters that we haven't seen a lot of either. So I do hope that maybe in the second trilogy, we will see more of that. But here it felt almost pointless. And up to a point that he said, well, let's put Bayas in here just to let everybody know he's still around and he's still pulling the strings. Just like a casual reminder. But it would have been nice if we would have seen more of him. Joanna says he was pulling all the strings. I thought Bayas was more a commentary on how there are bigger governmental forces pulling all the strings and making heroes through controlling the narrative. Yeah, I do think that that's probably what he was trying to do, Joe Abercrombie. But yeah, you don't really need a wizard for that. But that was his role in the first trilogy. So I guess that he's just continuously doing that here. It's kind of negative view on the world, I suppose, but yeah.
Just feel like a dilution of the character. It was like a lesser version of Bayaz. Like, I wouldn't have minded if it had been a lot more obvious from the beginning that he was the one inciting the war, or what was the whole point of this war? Because did they even explain why the Union is attacking the Northmen? Is that even a point?
I don't really know, because I think at one point they said something like that the current Jezal is friends with Logan Ninefingers, so when Logan Ninefingers was betrayed, that was what kind of started the entire war. But I don't really think that that's probably the official story, but that's not what's going on, because Bayaz would never let him start a war just because of that. So there's probably more going on that we don't know at this point. Probably because Black Dow is helped by the Gurkish and Bayaz doesn't want them to become too strong, something like that. But it's not really told explicitly. And then at the end, we hear that they don't get back to the Union. We will just start another war, I think in Styria, against Mercato. So yeah, it's just we will continue to try to actually just fight against the Gurkish through other channels.
So this book is either a non-entity or a big setup, basically, at this stage, not knowing anything about what's coming in the future. It must be a setup, right?
Yeah, I think that a lot of things that happen here will be important later on, especially with, again, a new chief or a new king in the north and all of that stuff. But I do think that you could say if this book was removed from the entire series, I don't think that it would matter a lot. But that being said, I did just really enjoy it for what it was, even though the plot in it was not important at all. And I think that from the start, I just let go of that, because I had heard a couple of people saying, like, there is zero plot, don't expect plot. I know that a lot of people say this for the original First Law trilogy, but that one had plot, this one doesn't. Mm-hmm. So I knew that going in. And I was just really starting to focus on the characters early on, and I think that helped. But the plot, yeah, it wasn't really that important, I think.
Yeah, I think them not knowing what this, I think it spoke to the average person in a war really doesn't understand what they're fighting for. I mean, that's made by bureaucrats and governments. So I think that was kind of I think that I kind of took that as the reason why there wasn't really a clear reason why we're all fighting. But
hi, Ashley.
Hey, Ashley.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, because we are following it from different POVs, and none of them are high up the chain of command. So it does make sense that we don't know anything, and maybe in one of the next books, and especially I think in Age of Madness, because we will see Glokta again, I suppose. I think that Chazal will play a bigger role, probably Bayaz as well. And I think that maybe then we will see more about the people who are pulling the strings, while here we were just following the soldiers who are just fighting because they have to fight. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things that I actually like, because we have that Tani guy who is in the cavalry, but they never have horses. And when they then do have horses, they need to give them away because they have to go through something that they can't follow the horses with. So I really like that part where he has his new recruits and they're like, yes, we're going to fight. And what do we have to do? And Tani is like super realistic. We just need to follow orders and that's it. Don't think about it. Don't question it. Just follow them. So I really like that we were following those characters down low. But at the other hand, yes, it would have been nice if we just saw one or two characters and the POV from the chain of command to have like that counterbalance, maybe.
Yeah, I mean that Corporal Tani, that to me that was the most Discworldian Pratchett-esque character of them all. It was literally a blend of Sergeant Colon and Corporal Nobby Nobs from Discworld. Is that kind of, you know, trying to get away with doing as little as possible and avoiding as much work as possible and still be seen as effective. So I did enjoy that. Like at the time when I finished reading the book, I thought that, you know, like, what's the point? Like I don't need a book to tell me about the pointlessness of war. But then, hey ho, 2 weeks later, now we've got all the stuff happening here in Europe. And I think the timing of reading the book and current events at the moment, it's being almost, spot on. I don't know how that's perceived over in the US, but here in Europe, we are really wondering many things.
Yeah, I agree.
Hey.
I definitely need to read this world as well, apparently, because judging on what you are saying about it, I will probably really like it.
It's a bit. I don't know if it's a bit of an acquired taste, but it does take time to get rolling. But anyway, I've got a question. So the ending, right? So that Carl Shivers action at the very end of the book, that is a game changer. Was that warranted? Was that like? Surely that was breaking all the rules of the, when the two, I can't remember, when the two guys are fighting to see who's going to be the king of the Northmen, and then Cold Shivers just comes out of nowhere and just, whacks the guy in the head. It's like, is that everyone was okay with it? Like, that was fair play? Like everyone was, what is that? I thought that was not right, but anyway.
Yeah, it caught me by surprise too.
Yeah, I think that's probably the only point in the entire book that I thought this is almost like a Deus Ex Machina, where you want something to happen, so you just write it in the book, because that's not right. And then even at the end, Bias is telling Colden everything that he did in order to let him live. And I thought, okay, so Shivers was part of that plan. And that would have made it kind of logical. But then he said, no, Shivers was just doing what he wanted. And that didn't make any sense. Because if you can kill a king without any repercussions, like if he was killed in the ring, in actual battle, that would have been fair. But just killing somebody because you feel like it, because you don't want to be his dog anymore, and nobody questions that, what's the point of being a king then, if you have zero protection against something like that? So I didn't really think that was logical. I think that he needed to write something to make Colden be king for like 5 minutes, but it didn't really feel right in the very realistic world almost of the First Law.
And I was surprised about Black Dow. I didn't see that. Regardless of how it happened, I didn't see that coming at the end. I didn't know that would happen. But I did think it was pretty neat to see Shivers the way that everyone viewed him from in this book versus the last one.
Well, I think you got here is the contrast between what he was like in Best Served Cold, how he started in Best Served Cold, and how he starts in Heroes, isn't it? We've seen his transformation, and it's a completely different character to what he was in the previous book, but it makes sense. Like the character arc is well executed across the two books.
Yeah, and I think I like Shivers more in here, but part of it was because you do have that setup in Best Served Cold, where I liked his story arc, but not as much as I liked it here, because here you see the result of somebody who tries to do good. But I do agree with what Joanna says. Like, you're more a spectator than immersed in the story of having deep empathy for the characters. And I do agree. I was reading about the characters. I found it interesting where they were going to end up. But if any of them would have died on the battlefield, I don't think that I would have cared that much. And if you compare that to West dying in the original trilogy, I cared about West dying. I thought that was so sad that he had, I think, part of a radiation poisoning, and he died at the end. And that's something that I can still remember. While in a month, if you ask me all the characters that died in this book, I wouldn't even know. If Gorst died here, that would have been fine. I would find it interesting to read about, but I wouldn't really care about it.
I think Joanna just hit the nail on the head with that. Like, you like the characters, but you're not invested in them. I think you're right. Whoever died, yeah, great. Like, cool, great story, but no one was gonna shed any tears for any of these characters. Yeah. You're not really rooting for anyone.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that for a character-driven story, that's quite unique. And then, especially when it works, And I can understand that that doesn't work for everyone, but I was quite surprised that it worked for me. Having zero plot, okay, but there are great characters, but I'm not really invested in what's happening to them. And I think that it's especially I saw that with Finri when she was captured together with her friend. And well, her friend has very dark path ahead of her. I thought we were going to see her again, maybe further along in the book, but that was like the last passage that we saw her. I think that we were supposed to feel a lot of things, especially after Finri was really struggling with it. I didn't really. I was more a spectator, like, okay, this is really bad. I'm sorry for the girl, but I didn't really felt very invested. And I think if there's one moment that you should feel invested, it was with her storyline, probably.
And is it just me, or a lot of these characters kind of cardboard cutouts of each other? Like this Logan Nine Fingers just in a different person's body almost.
Well, I do think that they all have like the general settings of a Northman, and I can see how he reuses certain characters. Maybe not per se Logan Nine Fingers, although you do see him in Scale, for instance. He reminded me a little bit of Logan Nine Fingers. But Calden reminded me of Jazal, because he was the same cocky and, knowing that he's funny and that he has natural charisma. I felt like Gorst was, well, not the same, but he was also a little bit like friendly, like nobody takes him seriously because he's like the big guy with the high voice. So I could see why that he was reusing certain characters, but in this one, I thought that it was done well, and I was glad that he just didn't use the same characters, and that he still added something fresh to it. But yeah, with that big a cast of characters, I think that you're going to see similarities between some of them at least.
I don't know. I don't know about kooky cutouts, but I suppose probably I wouldn't have cared if instead of Black Dow, it had been any of the other Northmen that we met in the first trilogy, ending up as king in the north. It wouldn't make a difference. And if instead of Cold Shivers, it had been again any, I think it was just a case. I need a Northman here, and I'll just pick on whichever one. So in that regard, yeah, interchangeable cutout, maybe,
Yeah.
but yeah, like I said before, it's really hard to flesh out so many characters in so few pages. So I think he did a very good job considering, the restrictions that he imposed on himself.
Yeah. I also think that, for instance, Black Dog, yeah, it could have been anyone, but he wasn't really a POV. So I didn't mind too much if you have like 20 POVs in a book. At least the POVs I felt were kind of unique. And I could see that they were more fleshed out. And then a Black Dog character who we never see from his point of view, if I'm not mistaken. So he was left in the middle. And there were also a lot of characters that I didn't really know. Have we seen them before? For instance, Craw, I don't know if we know him from the original trilogy, because there are just so many Northmen that in the end I don't really remember.
It's a good question.
But what Joanna is saying, when the men were laughing in one scene, I was laughing at the men, laughing but not laughing with the men, if that makes sense. So yeah, I do know what you mean, Joanna, but I must say I laughed out loud a couple of times with extremely silly jokes. Part of it could be that I'm very tired, and I was listening to the audiobook, and I must say that again, the narrator is amazing. So I just laughed a lot of times with him. Gorst, for example, has like a really high-pitched voice when he's talking, but when he's thinking in his head, he sounds extremely mean. So that definitely works in an audiobook, I think. When Tani was looking at his new recruits, and one of them was called Yolk, and he said, "Are you the best part of the egg?" I laughed out loud. Maybe that's just like extremely silly humor, but yeah, I found it very funny. And that's what I mean with new types of humor. Like with Logan Nine Fingers, for example, if he says the same sentence over and over again, in the end, I can expect what you're going to say. But with Tani being a new character, even though he was like a very small side character, he had humor that I was not expecting. And there were a couple of other characters in this book that felt the same.
I think I'm going to try immersive reading next time. I feel like I'm missing out on all these fun times with the audiobook.
Yeah, I must say I was reading immersively, so I had the book in front of me at times too, but it's still too slow to follow, and I couldn't put it any faster. So when I'm reading, apparently I read faster than times two. So towards the end, today, I had to just read it because otherwise I wouldn't be finished. And the end was not as good because of that, because I didn't have the narrator making everything as funny as he did in the book. So even if you're not like an audiobook person, just try it. Just have the book alongside it, because he's one of the best narrators that I've ever listened to.
I am actually 90% convinced to try it out, as much as I conceptually don't think that audio listening is actually reading. You're making a very good case. You're selling it very well.
And if you have the book alongside with you, it is reading.
But it must be like, it must work with the right book, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like possibly this one would have been a good book to do this with, isn't it?
Yeah, I think especially if there are jokes and if they are delivered well. At the other side of the coin is if you have a bad narrator. I've had it a couple of times. That can really break a book, and then you have to like just toss away the audiobook and read it physically.
Yeah. So, are you guys excited for the next one in the series after this one? Or
I am. I actually like westerns in movies. I don't really like westerns when they are too modern in books, especially my fantasy. I don't like to have it too modern. So I'm excited to see what will happen in the second one. But I am excited, especially after this one.
Yeah, I feel better about it after this one.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was a little bit not disappointed, surprised, because I've already got a waiting there. As soon as I'm done with the last book in the Wheel of Time, I'm picking it up straight away just to cleanse the palate and reset. But it's shorter. It's shorter than Heroes. How is it possible? Why is the next one shorter? I don't get it. That's got me a little bit irritated.
Yeah, it will definitely be a lot more fast-paced, I think.
Yep.
William says that he once read a book with two characters with the same name. I had the same thing happen with the Dandelion Dynasty, Grace of Kings, where we have two Phils, and they are written differently, but yeah, it's both Phil. I don't like that. And I do understand that realistically people have the same names, but it's just very confusing. But that's cardboard cutout characters to a new level. I don't think that Joe Abercrombie is that lazy. And the men are laughing at him. I was laughing at the men laughing. Yeah. Well, like a couple of times you can just see how idiotic some of the actions are, and you're more laughing with what's happening than, yeah. I can definitely see that. And I had that a couple of times as well.
So which author do you think, or could you give examples where you've seen these sort of cardboard cutout characters happen?
You're gonna get me in trouble, Jose.
Well, no, hey, because I don't read. I wish I could read as much as you guys do, but I just haven't got the time. And I would have thought that possibly in the more sort of pre-1990s fantasy, in the more Dungeons and Dragons, Forgotten Realms, Dragonlance, that's probably when you've got the more clear case of cardboard cutout characters. But I think post-1990, post-Wheel of Time.
Yeah, the one that sticks out for me the most, that just seemed like they were exactly what you would expect them to be at all times, and they say exactly what you would expect them to say. They do exactly what you expect them to say, and Yulene already knows what I'm going to say. But it is John Gwynne, the Faithful and the Fallen. That all those characters were really run by the numbers, and just I'll stop because I don't want to get any more hate on that.
No. Like I really enjoyed Faithful and the Fallen, but I can. But to me, you see, From the Falling is a fairly classic fantasy. Like it brings nothing new to the table, but I think it was well executed, and I enjoyed that quite a bit. But I take your point. Yeah.
I can see why people like it. I don't think it's necessarily bad. It's just not for me. It's one of those things. It's not garbage. It's just not my cup of tea. Is all it is.
Yeah, and I think part of it is also because if you're in like BookTube and you know about all of these amazing books, it's, for me at least, it's not good enough if a book is just fine. Because I think, well, there are all of these amazing books who really do something new and that I will love, that if a series is fine, I will not continue reading it. And with The Faithful and the Fallen, I felt the same. It's not like I thought that it was garbage. I actually enjoyed Malice. I enjoyed the second book. The third book, I start seeing this is too much battle for me. It's too much action. And the characters are not fleshed out enough for me to enjoy them. So instead of reading this 800-page book that I will give 3 stars, I'll just DNF the series and pick up a book that might be 5 stars. And I think that part of it are those cardboard characters. But I'm not the biggest fan of traditional fantasy. I DNF'd Wheel of Time. I DNF'd Lord of the Rings. And I DNF'd Magician by Feist. So apparently there's something wrong with me, and I don't like all the big names who have very much the good versus evil. And I can see that a lot of people really like that. But I just really enjoy morally gray characters somehow.
Johanna's going like this right now. She's still here. She's
Probably.
the Lord of the Rings.
Lord, forgive her, for she doesn't know what she speaks.
So Joanna says, I didn't think of the characters in this as cardboard cutouts or recycled, but maybe some of the themes were similar as in First Law. Shadow of the Gods and all the side characters blurred for me. Yeah. So I do agree with Joanna. For me, they didn't feel as cardboard cutouts because I couldn't really predict what any of them were going to do. I think that most of them had a very elaborate backstory, and even characters that you don't see a lot about. For instance, Red Beck, like the young boy who wants to go to war, and his mother is like, don't become like your father, and he goes and he unfortunately kills one of his own men. And after 4 days, he's back at the farm. He's like, I don't want to be like my father. And that's just a very small character, but I think that he was very well fleshed out for the small page time that he got. So I wouldn't say that they are cardboard cutouts. I do think that he uses some character traits from other characters. Like I said, Jezal and Calder, for me, felt a little bit the same, but he changes them enough, and he puts them in a completely different setting, Jezal being from the Union, Calder being from the North, that it feels very fresh. But I do think that he uses those mechanisms just to make new characters, because if you have so many, you can't start from scratch every time. But it didn't bother me.
Yeah.
And yes, definitely, the characters in Abercrombie are a bit exaggerated. Yeah, he really just enlarges all of their features and character traits to make it a little bit funny as well. Because Calder, if you're really that cocky in a situation where your father was killed and your wife is basically like held hostage, you wouldn't be that way, right? But it's funny.
Well, particularly when he was meant to be this coward, which really he ends up not really being at all, is it? Like you said, if these guys have killed your father, if your pregnant wife is hostage, and you're really a coward, you wouldn't act at all the way. So it's like we are told one thing, but we are shown something completely different. I don't know whether he's not playing with the reader, but like giving us a perception from the other characters, and we actually have to figure out really his true personality.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I like in a book, when you continuously change your perspective and you change how you think about a person because you get new information. And it's not because the person has changed, it's just because you know more about them. That's the same with Logan Ninefingers, for example. In the First Law, in the beginning, you think like, oh, he's such a good guy. And then throughout the book, you understand why the King in the North didn't want him around anymore. And that he's actually, he has a very dark side. But that's something that you learn throughout the book. He didn't get dark. He was dark from the start. You just didn't know. And that's the same thing that he uses here for a couple of characters, I think. And we haven't talked about Logan Ninefingers, actually, because I thought that he was going to be a big part in this book.
Yeah, so I thought he'd at least show up. I thought it'd be, yeah.
I don't know. I don't think he is, but there was certainly enough grounds to think that he's dead and gone after the first Law trilogy, isn't it? So
Mm-hmm.
there's going to be some sort of cheap way to bring him back or something like that.
Joanna is going to leave us. So enjoy your lunch, and thanks for adding your ideas. I really thought that it was interesting to see some other thoughts as well.
Yeah, I didn't know whether we were going to have a really good discussion here, because I thought that the book was so meh, like there's nothing to talk about. We're talking about the characters, isn't it? We're not actually talking about their book or the story or anything like that, because there isn't any plot there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's definitely true. And I think that I don't mind that much, because whenever I am in a discussion like this, I always go back to what happened to the characters. I never go back to the plot. So I didn't even realize that until the story was finished, and I tried to come up with some ideas to talk about in this live stream, and I realized, oh, there wasn't any plot to talk about. We can talk about the lack of plot, but not about what actually happened, because not a lot happened. And at the end of the book, I was actually surprised when Redback goes back to his mother, and his mother is like, well, nothing really happened here because you were only gone for 4 days. And Beck is surprised because it feels like a year. And I had the same idea. This didn't feel like 4 days. This felt like a lot more was happening.
Would you guys, I'm guessing what the answer is, but would you recommend this book to anyone as a standalone?
No.
No. Just because I don't know why you would pick this one up if you're not interested in the trilogy. And if you're interested in the trilogy, then read that one first.
Because this only makes sense in the context of the First Law universe. Like, you could pick Best Served Cold as a standalone, isn't it? If you were not interested in reading 9-12 books, you could just pick Best Served Cold and get a flavor for what Abercrombie does. But this book, it's only for the fan of the series, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's a good point. Yeah. I would have recommended it as a standalone. Without context, it doesn't really mean anything. And even with context, I mean.
Go ahead.
No, as a standalone, I don't know that it would be interesting to someone just jumping into the universe. Even having the context of the previous books, it's not a great. There's not a whole lot to as far as the plot goes.
And so I know that Jose put it completely at the bottom. Where would you put it, Steve?
Of my favorites of the series, it'd be towards the bottom. It wouldn't be at the bottom, but it's better than Best Served Cold.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't. I'm not raving about it. It's fine. It's not terrible. It's all right. It was. You finish it. There's not a whole lot to. I mean, I don't know. It's pretty, like Jose said.
But in your minds, can you separate the 3 books from the first trilogy? Because I can't. To me, it's like the first trilogy is one thing, Best of Cold is another thing, and this is another thing. I don't have that good a brain to keep track of everything separately.
Yeah, I'm the same. Especially if it's one big plot. Sometimes you have a trilogy where like each of the books feel like a standalone. Then I can see the difference. But here, the only thing that I know is that in the original First Law trilogy, the second one was with the quest and a lot of traveling.
Yeah.
So that's what I still remember as the second one. And that's why I like that one most of all, because I really like traveling. So that's the only thing that I remember. But what happened exactly in the first one and what happened exactly in the third one, no idea.
There's lots of moments in those books. There's like seems like singular moments that you remember, but not the entirety. Like in the first and third book, especially.
Mm-hmm.
But Maybe it's the wheel of time getting you, Jose. You need to.
Oh God. Oh God. It's yeah. Because like I want to. I think I'm gonna take a month of just reading standalones or something like that. There's a few more things I want to read, but it's making me wonder about Malazan and about come on, Sanderson, the Stormlight. Whether I just want to pick one book, see how it goes, and maybe let time pass. And then I don't want to read. I don't want to pick a long series and force myself to read one brick every month because it's unless I love it, but it really has taken it out of me.
Yeah, but with Wheel of Time, I can see that.
I don't understand it. I mean, maybe someday, I don't know, someone will sit me down and we can have a chat and they can explain to me because I just don't get it.
Yeah.
Terrible. You're a trooper though for sticking in there.
Yeah.
I've only got 600 pages left of the whole bloody affair. So,
man.
But even I don't think Sanderson is even saving it. The last 3 books aren't much better either. So I don't know. Someone will explain. I'm hoping.
Yeah, I think it also maybe helps if you're in it from the start and you have like one book every couple of years and you don't have to read them like very close together. At the other hand, if you have the slog and you're like waiting for a book for years and then it's one where nothing happens, yeah, that's also a disappointment. So, no, I don't know.
No, I don't know what's the best way to go about it because how are you guys doing with Mollison?
I enjoyed it. Confused. Enjoyed it.
But you fully done one book, have you so far?
Yeah, we have Deadhouse Gates in a few weeks.
I think we have the live show the 9th of April or the 10th, somewhere around then.
Like that.
Have you started it yet, Steve?
I haven't. I might. I'm reading the hand that. This one I got an arc from Holly Tinsley. The hand that God damn it, I forget the follow up to Wee Man and Bastion Shadow. So I'm gonna read that, and then I might jump into Deadhouse Gates or The Winter Road because we're having the Winter Road discussion with Adrian Selby.
Okay.
Because I understand that in the Malazan, there's also books by a different author that also fit in the universe. So are you reading those as well, or sticking to the Erickson novels?
I think we're just sticking with Erickson for now.
Yeah. From what I've heard, first time around, you're best just reading the main series of 10 books, and then you can pick up the others, which are, I think, also series, but it's best to read them afterwards. Even if chronologically they might come before or in between, it will be too confusing. It's what somebody told me.
Right.
But yeah, if we do like Malazan and we finish the 10 books, we have like, 20 more to get to? So it's a long journey. But with sub-series, at the very least, you can take breaks in between. That's what I like with, for instance, Realm of the Elderlings. Yes, it's 16 books, but it's trilogies. And if you finish one trilogy, you can take a break and it's fine to just wait 6 months, for example. You're not going to forget anything important. While with Wheel of Time or Malazan, I do think that it's necessary to at least pick them up every couple of months because otherwise you will forget things.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's what I like with this one as well, with First Law, that you have the first trilogy, then you have 3 standalones. I think that we also have Short Ends, which is short story collection.
Yeah.
Which I think is the book that we have to read after Red Country. And then you still have that trilogy. So I like that he cut it up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know about Stormlight. I don't know about Malazan. No story needs 14 volumes to be told. Yeah. Like even the Bible, it takes a longer time span. It doesn't take that long to tell all that story. So.
Yeah, true. Well, with Stormlight, if you do want to jump in, after the first 5 books, he completed 1 arc. So he has said like those first 5 are one story. And then the other 5 take place a couple of years after, I think, and follow different characters, if I'm not mistaken. So that's why I'm starting now. I want to start before those 10 books are out. because
Well,
that's
if you're not careful, he may have them out by the next month, isn't it?
yeah, that's true. He reads. He writes like a maniac. I don't know how he does it.
I guess it's like Stephen King. He's one of these authors whose job is to write, and they make it a job. They sit down in front of the computer from 9 to 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and Stephen King said that he will set a goal of 2,000 words a day or something like that.
Wow.
And that means that in a month, 2 months, you've got a novel done. So
Yeah,
they say as a job.
Yeah, I do like Brandon Sanderson's writing, but I don't know how that will evolve over time. If he really is going to treat it like a job, like now in 2 years' time, he has written 5 new books, I think 4 novels and then 1 graphic novel. I don't know about the quality because in the end, they are sold now. And he didn't even edit them yet. He's like releasing now the first chapters of them, if I'm not mistaken. And a lot of people are saying like, oh, this is terrible, but it's not even edited yet. And people still, I think that he has more than 20 million at this point.
Mhm.
So I don't know if I like that you can just write whatever and not tell anything about it and people are going to buy it. Is that going to have an effect on how he writes? I don't know.
Well, but the thing is, his age, he's not even 50 yet. So can you imagine how much, even if he slows production to half of what he's doing now, what is he going to write? Another 30 novels before?
Probably, yeah. But I think if you look at what he wants to do with the Cosmere, he needs that. Because he wants to finish Stormlight Archive. I think that for Warbreaker, he wants to make that a trilogy. Elantris, he wants to make a trilogy. He has Mistborn Era 1, Era 2. He wants to have Era 3 and Era 4. He has some standalone novels that he wants to have in between. He wants to write his YA as well. So he has a lot of plans. But he's one of the few authors that I do think can make it work because he does write very fast.
Wow.
Yeah, but he's very ambitious.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Right.
I don't know if yeah, we went on a little bit of a side stream here.
Clearly digressed here.
Yeah, but I guess for this one, since there wasn't a lot of plot, and we did talk about most of the important characters, I still hope that we will see Logan Ninefingers at one point. But now I'm just starting to think maybe he's just really dead. And that would have been the most realistic call of action, I suppose. I did like that you had that part in the, I don't know, I want to say trenches, but they didn't have trenches. But in the forest, where they kept saying like Logan Ninefinger is here, and they start calling, and people were really afraid. And I was thinking, yes, he's here, but he wasn't. So I like that subversion of having expectations and then just know it's realistic, he's still dead. And how the Dogman used that. I wanted to see more of the Dogman, actually, because he didn't really have a POV. But other than that, I think that we said what we needed to say. I really liked it because I'm not plot-driven at all. But I can see why other people might think that it's not really necessary to have in the First Law universe. So I don't know if any of you have closing remarks that you want to share.
It was fine. It was. I liked it more than I expected to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it wasn't fantastic, but it is a very nice break in between Wheel of Time books, and sets me up for what was the next one? Red Country. That's it, Red Country.
Yes. Okay. So you're both going to read Red Country. Still excited for the First Law.
Ready to go. Yeah,
Definitely.
I want to get to 8, so turning.
Perfect. Okay, so thanks for joining me, both Jose and Steve. I had a really fun time hearing your thoughts. I thought that you two were definitely going to love it as well. So apparently I'm the only one who really liked it. But it was really fun hearing your thoughts. And everybody in the chat, thanks. It was an interesting discussion. And see you next time. Bye.
Bye.